How's it going, guys? And welcome back to BL3's Forgotten. This here's where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the 10-gallon. If you'd like to farm the 10-gallon for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to Varash's Canopy on Eden 6 and make your way towards and all the way through the Family Jewel until you hit the save station right outside of Genevieve's arena. From there, you of course just run forward, drop on down, and kill Genevieve, and hopefully get yourself the 10-gallon. The 10-gallon is a legendary Tediore SMG able to roll in any of the elements, and fires normally, though on the reload it will summon a drone. This drone will follow the player and shoot at nearby enemies. This drone will stop firing when the magazine is empty, however it doesn't go away. Instead, you can reload the 10-gallon from your hands again, which will throw a magazine containing all of the remaining ammo towards the drone, which will then start firing again. This drone stays active even when swapping off of the 10-gallon or when entering fight for your life. The damage from this drone is able to crit. Worth keeping in mind, this weapon can roll splash damage anointments, however it itself does not deal splash damage. The 10-gallon has received quite a few changes, initially gaining a 8% weapon damage increase, which was then followed by another weapon damage increase. It would then receive the overall Tediore nerf, which was 50% less reload explosion damage, which I wouldn't have thought would affect the 10-gallon, but apparently it did. Presumably it just lowered the drone damage, as later on that reload damage was increased again along with another 11% weapon damage. Now first off, I'm just going to talk about the 10-gallon on its own as a weapon, and surprisingly enough, even in that sense, I actually kind of like this weapon. At True Guardian Takedown, it falls off into fucking oblivion. Both the drone and firing it as a gun is just completely worthless, but as I'm sure many of you know, the inability to run True Guardian Takedown isn't really make or break for a weapon for me. The 10-gallon on True Molly 1 Takedown was actually a surprisingly good shooter, and I say surprisingly, but I mean it has a 32,000 base damage with a pretty decent fire rate. Like, it does have some pretty solid base stats to work with here, so I guess really it's not too big of a surprise, but the drone here is still kind of iffy. The damage is honestly fine against squishies, it's good supplementary damage, however when it hits a crit, it can actually deal some pretty solid damage even against badasses, but since that's reliant on hitting a crit, that's not entirely consistent. Now when it comes to any just base game content below takedowns, both shooting and as a drone, the 10-gallon's actually really good. Like, obviously this doesn't mean overall it's a good weapon. It doesn't function at all at True Guardian Takedown, parts of it function at True Molly 1 Takedown, but for everything else, it comes together very well, it's very usable, and it's very fun. The only enemy type that I found the drone fell off against damage-wise was Anointeds, but it could easily take down badasses on its own. Again, overall this isn't a great gun, but it is good enough for me to recommend it just on its own on the basis of being fun and different. But not only that, I do actually believe that it has some potential. And that potential simply lies in all the different things that the 10-gallon can synergize pretty well with. Of course, the 10-gallon drone gets global elements. The Revolter, URAD, and Terror Cryo will all apply to your drone's damage. The drone gets Infusion, meaning Amara can make it deal any of her attuned elements. It can proc Megavore, Short Fuse, and on crit with Zane, the shots from the drone can be erasered, which means you can use a Hustler to get more consistent crits, to proc Brain Freeze, to get Icebreaker damage, and to get more consistent eraser procs from it. So yeah, is it gonna be something amazing? Absolutely not. Is there potential for some really fun and interesting builds here? Absolutely there is. Now I did also say that the 10-gallon is different, and I would like to clarify my thoughts on that specifically as well, because often the 10-gallon is compared to the Dark Army, with the Dark Army being considered like the power crept version of the 10-gallon. I straight up disagree with this. They do have similarities, of course. They're both drone weapons. The Dark Army summons 3 drones, and the Dark Army just does more damage. Personally though, I think there's enough differences here for them to both exist. For one, the Dark Army doesn't consistently deal elemental damage. Most often, the Dark Army drones deal physical damage, and they can deal a fuck ton of elemental damage, but this is only for 3 seconds after reloading on an empty magazine. This alone, when compared to the fact that the 10-gallon will always deal its element as long as it's firing, is enough of a difference for me to enjoy both of these weapons existing. That's not all there is though. The 10-gallon and the Dark Army actually have inverse synergies from each other when it comes to things like ammo regen and mag size. Both of these synergize negatively with the Dark Army, as with the Dark Army you want to be reloading it on an empty magazine as often as possible to continue that upkeep of not only just the elemental damage, but the significantly increased elemental damage. The 10-gallon though, when you reload it, you want to be reloading it on as full of a magazine as possible, which does mean that ammo regen and increased mag size can make playing with the 10-gallon feel a lot smoother, as you can more more so fight alongside the drone. Instead of having to make the decision of how much you want to delegate ammo between firing yourself and handing off to the drone, it lets you continually chuck to reload the gallon while being able to fire yourself and not just hand off empty mags. Definitely a bit of an obvious synergy with Moe's here. But again, all of this so far has just been talking about the 10 gallon as a gun. Here's where it becomes useful and can actually legitimately hold a place in the meta. The biggest difference between the Dark Army and the 10 gallon is that you do not have to have the 10 gallon equipped for the drone to exist. Toss it out and all you have to do is periodically swap back to it to refill the magazine. The ability for it to roll in all elements means that you can use it as incredible utility. Again, I'll mention Hustler Zane with a brain freeze. This will help you freeze enemies without even looking at them. Though even just having a cryo one on any other character can also help to do that. You could use a radiation one for radiation chains or any of the other 3 elements just to get more out of Harmageddon. Or if you want to do a full-on drone build, use a 10 gallon and a Dark Army. These 2 weapons can coexist in the game because they can literally coexist in the same build. Throw out a 10 gallon and use a Dark Army. You have 4 drones just from your weapons alone now. To wrap up here though, I love the 10 gallon. I think it's an incredibly fun gun on its own, even if it falls off entirely at True Guardian Takedown and the drone is pretty much just pure utility on Molly-1 Takedown. Everything below that, this is a very enjoyable weapon to use. But beyond that, there's just so many potential synergies here that you can definitely use it in a lot of different builds as an actual damage source, or you can just go ahead and use it as pure utility. The 10 gallon is an incredibly fun and incredibly variable weapon with potential behind it. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube, but also over on Twitch, where there will be a link to down in the description below. And just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.